Compañeros, welcome to another edition of the Single Data Partners podcast. I am Carlos El Chacon, your host. This is episode 244, and I am joined today by Miss Josephine Bush. Hello.
Hi.
And with me, I have Eugene Meininger.
Howdy.
And Kevin Fiesel.
Hello.
And this was not planned ahead of time, but apparently Kevin and Josephine are in the same place, or at least somewhere very green. So, there's that. And then you have Eugene and I, we're looking a little more confined.
So this doesn't work at all when you're on the podcast because now nobody has any idea what you're talking about, Carlos.
There is that.
Imagine, if you will, a world in which green screen backdrops reflect a beautiful meadow or a mountainous range or Eugene's wall.
Hey, I've got
in fairness,
Terraforming Mars,
amazing green
the board
screen
game.
Eugene has an amazing green screen which just happens to reflect exactly what the background looks like.
I can't reveal my current location for my own safety, so I'm simulating
There we go.
a 1970s house with grandma wallpaper.
He's got that security clearance, right? And he's got to keep track of it. Okay, so today we are talking about SQL Server Audit. Now, we have to go in the Wayback Machine in the Single Data Partners podcast, all the way back to May of 2016. So this is going to be episode 42 with Brad McEwen, right, up in DC. So we recorded in May. Now, SQL Server 2016 was not going to get released until the next month. And then there was a major splash with Service Pack 1. Now, I don't want to spoil all of Josephine's thunder, so I will just kind of leave it at that. But when the last time we spoke about this subject, we were in a much different place in terms of SQL Server. So we're glad to have Josephine here. And I think this is one of the great things that I enjoy about the podcast, because it's been a little while since we've had a guest on the show.
Yeah. And
it's nice to have her here and talking about, right, just a way that she approaches things, right? How does that make it a little more approachable for the rest of us, right? So before we dive into auditing, we do have a few shout outs. Oh gosh. And now he's going to kill me because I should have figured out, confirmed how to say his last name. And now I'm going to get it wrong, right? Pressure. I clicked the record button and now I'm all, so
just embrace the wrongness.
There we go.
I thought you already had.
So I've got Greg Celentano, Hadi Mahudian, Jen McCown, who's in Colorado, apparently, Gustavo Maya, Arun Singh, Hugo Boroquez, Ernest McNeil, Daniel Taylor, Sergey Kubari, Qwerty Oleg.
So Carlos, I have a LinkedIn feature I want you to know about, and I want whoever might get a shout out to know about.
There we go.
Not only can you specify your pronouns now if you want, but you can also specify how your name is pronounced. So for anyone who's Carlos has ever butchered their name, go on to LinkedIn and please record yourself saying how your name is properly pronounced. So just want to let everyone know about that nice feature.
There we go. Yes, so that I can probably.
I still won't matter.
Can try.
No, you'd have to do your homework.
Play the LinkedIn recording, right? We just
play the LinkedIn recording.
Oh my goodness!
Do your own shout outs now, compañeros.
So this is going to sound like a weird tangent. I promise I'm going somewhere. Have any of you ever read The Jungle by Upton Sinclair?
Ooh.
Sadly.
Yeah. So it has a lot of like Eastern European surnames. Like I don't know if they're Polish or whatever. And whenever I was in like 9th grade in sociology class, we were reading the book and I thought, oh, I'm smart. I know Linux. I'll just run it through a text to speech thing so I can listen to it. And it had a fun time with those Eastern European surnames, is all I'll say. So yeah, so computers won't help us here in this case, unfortunately.
Okay, to round out the shout outs for today, we've got Joe Crowley, Wardrick Rudd, Nupana Natarajan, Lingan Song, Nasir Al-Shababi, and Kavitha Ravi Venkateshan. So, compañeros, thanks for connecting with us and communicating with us in some form, right? If we can get those recordings, right? Maybe that's the way of the future, right? Otherwise, right? I can just simply say thank you and for connecting. Okay, so we know, right, that times are difficult, right? Maybe you're looking for some help there in your organization, and you'd like someone to help you with your databases. Maybe you want to go on vacation, right? And you'd like to make sure that someone's still watching your databases. Well, SQL Data Partners offers this service through our SQL Data Care Managed Services program. Who knows, right? Everybody needs somebody to lean on, right? You just might have a problem that I'll understand, right? And so our resources can help you when you get into trouble. So feel free to reach out at sqldatapartners.com to get the conversation started. So with that, let's jump into auditing. So now, Josephine, I feel like we should give you just a little bit of background because we were talking about PostgreSQL beforehand, and you've written a book, and I actually looked up your book, and I happened to notice that was written for Postgres or Postgres database.
It was written for MySQL.
Oh, MySQL.
As the foundation. Yes.
How about that?
Yeah, as the foundation. Yeah, right. Because the publisher wanted that. So I went ahead with that. But then it compares SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle, and Postgres SQL to each other, right? So if there's differences, then it goes and outlines those differences. Okay. So you are multi-database listic. Yes, I like that, multi-database listing. Exactly. Yes, I should put that in my bio, my title, my bio heading or something. Yeah, multi-data. Yeah, hey, I like it. I'll support that. Mm-hmm. Let's see, and you'll forgive me, right? I do have one other announcement. So our friends over at DevArt, who you may have known to us, and so I know it's serious. A lot of people have been focusing on it, the conflict in Ukraine. So DevArt is actually over that way. And when we were talking with them, they had gone silent for a little while. And then they reached back out to us and were like, we had to vacate. We had to move. Oh, geez. And so they are, at least last I've heard, right, things are well with them. They are still in business, right? They're still cranking out interesting products. And so they have offered a discount, a promo code for their tooling. So if you're looking for tools that are going to integrate with SQL Server Management Studio, right, you can take a peek over at DevArt. And the promo code is 10 SQL Data Partners. That's going to get you a 10% discount, ironically, to their code, right? So this is Studio for SQL Server, SQL Tools, and SQL Complete. Right, you can use that code at the checkout, and then I'll give you 10% off. So we hope that you'll take a peek at that and remember them right when you're checking out. Okay, so now we can finally get into audit here. Now, one of the interesting things here is I'm using some of your words here that you've said in other sessions. Is generally we think of audit as painful, as bad, right? As something that's to be endured. Right. You have a slightly different take on that, right? So tell us about your take on audit and why we as database administrators or data stewards should be a little more forward thinking when it comes to auditing our databases. Right, exactly. Like you're saying, I think people think, oh, this is scary. External auditors come in, even internal auditors come to your company or they work at your company, they talk to you and they're trying to find something that you did wrong or what have you. So it seems scary. Or like in America, we have the Internal Revenue Service, and people think, oh my God, I'm getting audited. It happened to me once. I thought they contacted me and they were going to audit me.
And I was I guess I seemed pretty tense about it. And the auditor said, well, hold on a second. We think we owe you money. So that lightened things up a bit. So I always say.
You went out and bought a lottery ticket afterward.
Right. Yeah, I know. I did everything. Yeah, I was really lucky that day. They did owe me money, it turned out.
Wow.
So I have like even a good auditing story there. So I get why people think it's this bad thing, like they're trying to catch you doing something wrong or you're going to get in trouble. But yeah, like I say in my presentations, I think it's a good thing because you want to see what people are doing, because I mean, a lot of times you don't, well, at least where I work, a lot of times you don't know all the perms people have and all the things they could be doing in there. And if somebody comes to you and says, it's the database, it's broken, that's why it's broken, and you don't really even know because you don't know what changed. You have no idea. So
we had that situation this morning, right? So somebody actually hit me up on our chat and a customer.
Oh, geez.
And they're like, "Hey, we have a system outage. Did anybody make a change?" Right? Because that's the first thing that something must have changed, right?
Exactly. It's so true. And it's funny now because a lot of people used to come to me blaming the database. I've noticed now I barely get that at all with this auditing, because it seems like they blame it less now. I don't know how or why, because it still could be a database change, but a lot less people come to me. Plus I've gone to people and said, hey, I saw you change this thing. And they're like, what? Like, I feel like they're looking around trying to figure out, like, how did I know that they changed something?
Big brother has just entered my personal space.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. They're like looking behind them, like, what? And yeah, and they didn't even know you could do that kind of thing. They're surprised when they find out that, what? You could audit everything I do? I'm like, yeah, I mean, I'll just be honest with you. I don't audit everything you do because it would be a fire hose. I could never see anything anybody was doing at all. But yes, I audit specific things. Like I want to see if somebody's changing somebody's perms, adding perms or things like that. I want to see if people are changing schema or things or settings in SQL Server, stuff like that. You know, I definitely want to see all that stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So we now, so as I mentioned at the beginning, right, one of the changes since the last time we broached this subject on the podcast is SQL Server 2016 SP1. So what's been made available to us with the newer versions of SQL Server?
Well, at least with auditing, you know, honestly, I don't know what the deal with SQL Server 2016 was in particular, to be honest. I'm not really sure like what that issue was. I haven't had any issues auditing any of my SQL servers. I have all the way back. Well, I used to have 2008. We got rid of those, thankfully. But I have all the way. Yeah, I made it finally, thankfully. So we have back to 2012. I haven't had any issues per se, but the one thing I will note that's nicer about the newer versions, especially with SQL Server Audit, are some of the columns available to you in the audit. So I can speak to that in the since 2016, actually 2017 and newer, you actually get host information, IP information about where this query came from, like what IP, what host it came from. Because before 2017, you just get the statement, you get the user, you get a lot of information about what audited action was, but you don't get the IP or the IP in 2017, but in 2019, even nicer, you get the host name. I mean, not that you can't resolve the IP yourself, but still it's nice. It's sitting right there in the audit. You don't even have to go resolve the IP. Sure. So, and that helps a lot, because I have found that when you go to users and you say, for example, we had to audit a SQL Server because SA got shared around to everybody. Yeah. And they didn't even know the power they had. They had no idea. They had no idea. They could drop an entire database, whatever they wanted. They could grant anything, but they were just doing their jobs. But a lot of people don't necessarily know all the places they're using it. They're like, yeah, I've got this process running in like Excel on my computer, for example. That's like a real thing. Or over here in this program, all these programs, they don't know. So then you tell them, because it also gets the application name as well. The audit will get the application name. And that does that in all the different versions actually in SQL Server Audit. But so still, sometimes they're like, well, okay, that's great, but I have the application running in multiple places. So now, at least with 2017 and more current versions, you can tell them, okay, well, that's the host name. Okay. Now I know what you're talking about. Because you can't go to people and say, well, I audited, oh, you're using SA. And they're like, what? I am. Oh, and or people are, I'm busy. I don't have time to fix this or whatever. So you give them a list. They're like, oh, okay. And there's still some stragglers. Like you have to say, look, we're going to cut you off. So you got to fix this, right? But that's
Right.
not, it's not.
Just so you know. Now,
Yeah.
am I mistaken there? I was thinking that before 2016's SP1 that auditing was an enterprise only feature. Am I wrong?
Yeah, it was enterprise only so that's a good point. In 2008, it was enterprise only. But in 2012, SQL Server Audit, server level audit became available in standard.
Okay, so that was,
and then database audit was only in enterprise still in 2012. But the thing that is confusing about that, I think, and I like to outline this in my presentations, is that server audit is just it can be deceiving. You might think you can only audit things at the server level, but you actually can audit all the databases the same way at the server level. So you can put a bunch of database actions in there and it just gets all your database the same way. So in 2012, it was very powerful that it was a big thing that they opened it up to standard.
Got you.
Yeah.
So in essence, while it may just be terminology, right? So while the specific database audit wasn't available, because you could do it the server audit, quote unquote,
Right.
It was there. And
right. It is confusing though, because you're thinking, oh, well, now I can't audit database. But the thing with the database audit that is different, the thing you can do at database level that you can't do at server level is you can't audit at the database audit. You can actually get who's selecting things, who's inserting things, who's up. It's like more of the DML type stuff. You cannot do that at the server level. So that was lacking. And I do get developers coming to me a lot of times saying, I don't know what's writing to this table. So then, you want to get that with the audit. The other thing I want to mention though, really quickly before I forget later, is there's not just SQL Server Audit. So you can use extended events to also audit. And I use that in a lot of cases, especially on older servers where SQL Server Audit won't tell me the IP or the host name where it came from, right before 2017 version. Extended events gives that to you. It always gives that to you. So a lot of times I use that instead. It just depends on, there's a lot of use case involved, like why I would use one over the other. And if we want to get into that, we can, but it's just another option for you. I wanted to throw that out there. So in case SQL Server Audit doesn't give you what you need, you also have extended events. That's just another option for auditing.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Well, I think those are two great use cases in terms of why would I care about this. Okay, I don't think these aren't like everyday scenarios, but you will be approaching. I have definitely had conversations about this. Like, well, hey, are we still using this procedure, right? Or is this table still getting written to?
Man.
And so
yeah.
Those are like, okay, well, how do I best do that? You can kind of come up with some things, and there's some weird, things that I've done in the past when I should have just been like, you know what, we just need to audit this, right?
Yeah.
An extended events, has come of its own. But I feel like those are some pretty good use cases, right?
Yeah, it's because Carlos doesn't like my normal answer to, is this thing still in use? Drop it, see who complains.
While there is that, right? People are gun shy about production, particularly if pieces of it are still going to stay, right? So you're not just talking about the database, right? So that we know the database is still in use. I just need to know if a procedure or a table is there, right? That's where usually the heebie-jeebies, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that. So, for example, my essay thing where it got shared around, it was on 2014. So I needed to know the IP. So I actually use extended events for that instead, because extended events really shines when you want to say, I want to do an entire user, I want to do an entire database or an entire schema. I think it really works that way. The thing with extended events is not good is if you want to say who's executing a stored procedure or something like that. I don't think it really shines there. I think that's definitely better with SQL Server Audit, because you can put the audit on the database. And then you can say, I just want execute on this one stored procedure, and it gets that. Extended events, you can it gets tricky with extended events. To do that little individual table stored procedure kind of thing is a lot harder.
Yeah. And one of
So
the
when it
other
comes-
things. Oh,
Oh,
good.
go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was
Eugene.
gonna say,
I'll get
well,
you next one.
Yeah. Now, all my knowledge about auditing comes from like literally 2010. So bear with me here. Back when I did it for a
This is
customer.
the Eugene Ketchup episode.
Yeah, I know, right? So I'm taking notes. No, but well, one of the things I definitely remember about with extended events as well is you have to be extremely thoughtful with the performance considerations, because if it's something that's pre-filtering, then the performance can be really good, right? Because it's like, oh, well, I see this application ID and you're filtering just on that. And so I'm, but if you do something like, oh, I want you to save the execution plan, or you do something where, it can't do the filtering until after it's parsed the event, then it can be really expensive, right? And so there's definitely a certain amount of thoughtfulness that has to go into, okay, I'm going to use extended events. It's not just set it and forget it a lot of times. So
yeah, I think it's pretty lightweight, generally speaking. I personally tell people to avoid auditing everything under the sun. Like you could set off extended event now, because, instead of profiler, where people used to come to me and say, oh, I see something happening now, something is wrong, and I would set up profiler. Now I would do that extended event, and it gets everything on the server, right? So yeah, there could be overhead with that. But generally speaking, especially when we're talking about auditing, how much do you really want to audit? Before you're drinking from a fire hose, you might as well audit nothing, because now you can't find anything, because if you get every single read, every single write, everything that's happening, now you might as well just not have audited. That's my main thing. And quite frankly, I did crash a production server with SQL Server Audit.
Sure.
In 2014. And I don't know if it was the nature of the version or the service pack or whatever we were on, or the fact that the server was like terabytes in size of databases, and it was a huge transaction volume, and I had to do something I don't recommend people do, which is get audit select statements. Because of PCI compliance, people would be decrypting credit legitimately as a customer service function. They would go through an app, and then they would hit the database and it would decrypt through this function. So I had to actually audit that function. Well, one day I thought, I'll be fancy and I'll just disable this because I want to modify it. Well, it wouldn't disable. And then I was like, whoops, I can't get into SQL Server Management Studio anymore. And then my boss came out and said, it's got really quiet out here. So I hear some whispering. So my DBA colleague, the three of us were all like, ooh. And it was like, yeah, we had to bounce the service because nothing would respond. So, that was a very specific case. And actually, the thing is, I've tried to test it in current version, like 2019 or so. I can't replicate the load and the size of the databases. But the thing for people to remember is, when I tell my horror story, it should just give you like a lock timeout exceeded error type thing, right? It's going to say, oh, I can't stop, because it's busy auditing. I said to you said to it, audit. Right. So it said I'm busy. So like, I'm not going to stop because you're excited. Yeah. So
because you told me to.
Yeah. The thing is, like, for me in that scenario, I had to do it. We had to do it for PCI compliance. So there was no way around it. And then I just tell people, if that's the case, you have to be very careful about that. But normally, if it's just long running queries, or you can get in between all of them, somehow be able to disable it in between, then you're fine. But my horror story is very specific. I honestly can't get anything to crash anymore. So I don't know. Yeah.
Which just says we got to try harder. We got to make this thing burn.
I know. I should terabyte sized databases. I don't even have enough storage for that on my virtualization server. So it would be very hard. Oh, I crashed my SQL Server Management Studio recently, trying to get the audit to audit more things, to try to get it to give me the error, and actually crashed my SQL Server Management Studio. Before it crashed, the audit was like, I can stop, no problem. And then my SQL Server Management Studio crashed, actually. So I was like, oops. Oh, well.
You were mentioning that there are some possibilities for auditing with extended events, and obviously auditing with SQL Server Audit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Are there circumstances where you see creating both of them specifically for the purposes of auditing? So having a SQL Server Audit running in addition to an extended event session that's specifically intended for auditing?
I could see that if I don't have overlap. Like, I'm not going to audit something with the SQL Server Audit and then also audit the same thing with extended events. But I do have scenarios where, so basically my setup is like this. Every production server has a SQL Server Audit on it, because it's going to get all the the schema, like DDL stuff and perms changes, right? So it's always going to get that. But I might add an extended event because my boss said, well, these passwords are not compliant. They're not complex enough. We're gonna have to change them because the auditors told us that we have to do that. So then I would use an extended event in that case to get everything that user is doing. So that user might be changing schema or perms or something in the SQL Server audit. I mean, it's theoretically possible, and I might also catch things they're doing in extended events because I'm going to get everything they're doing in extended events. But yeah, I would set up both, but just not overlapping. Like I mentioned the cases of sometimes you need to do like SOX this or PCI that or whatever, and maybe there'll be some overlap. Maybe you need to have them all stored in different places, but you need the same data. I could see that use case, but I always try to recommend if you're going to use multiple things, just make sure they're not overlapping with each other very much.
There you go. So we have so in terms of what we're auditing, right? We mentioned that a lot of so the DDL pieces definitely, right? There could be some DML, the select some pieces that may be on occasion, right? Not recommended, perhaps, right? So that's just
right.
That's
well, yeah, keep it as narrow. Basically, keep it as narrow as you possibly can, right?
Don't make that your first one.
Right.
Go audit something else before you start auditing select statements, right?
Right.
Now, how long do you normally keep your audit information around? And admittedly, right, so we're coming from, I suppose, so our compañeros, we're going to assume that they have not been using auditing, right? This is new to them, right? They want to be ahead of the curve. They're smart folks. And they're like, hey, I'd like to start putting some of these pieces in. And so we're giving them some generalizations, because your needs will vary based on your, all your audit needs, right? So there's no way we can say this is what you should do in all cases. This is all very general, right? General context. So you've set that up, you start collecting everything. How long are you keeping that stuff around for? And and perhaps maybe even how much, right? So even the DDL stuff, what's a normal churn for you in terms of over a month or even a quarter, right?
Right. So let me mention something. Well, you jog my memory on something, that when you're configuring SQL Server Audit or you're configuring extended events, you want to make sure that, so I write to files. There's other options, like my presentation will go through different options you can use, but I write to a file, it's easy. Don't ever make your files max sizes, max files. You will never be able to read them. I'm not even sure why SQL Server has an option to make a terabyte size file, but it's like a lot of parsing through. It'll just never. You'll have to query it and then go home for a month and just not come. Yeah. So anyway, I just want to mention that as far as sort of collecting the data, but as far as retaining the data, I basically keep 30 days. On the DDL and permission type stuff. That's all I keep. We don't have any specific requirements. Like, let's say, for instance, at my old job, which is a credit card processing company, then there were a lot more specific compliance things. We even had to know what backup failed or succeeded 6 months ago kind of stuff, even for the auditors. So in that case, I would keep a lot more. So like you're saying, Carlos, it's really dependent on what each user, each company, what your company requirements are going to be. I like 30 days just because it seems like a good, I don't know, round number, okay. Because if something's going to come up, it may come up within that month. Sure. I would say 90 days for me, maximum is what I would keep, because it's probably going to come up before then. Something's going to happen. And plus I have a daily report that I email to say, here's what happened the last 24 hours. Because I want to see if anything, I don't want to have to query the database all the time, right? So I want to see what happened. Plus I have a PowerShell set up that sends a HTML file to a Jira ticket that the auditors require us to review a report on a weekly basis. But so I have that as well. So that's also documented. So worst case, I guess, if I needed to see something that was 6 months ago, it isn't a Jira ticket. So there is still that. I mean, technically that is retention in a way.
But, yeah. So this is kind of where I wanted to, the meat of the conversation to go here, because there is one thing, or it's one thing to collect the information,
Mhm.
right? But I feel like it's another completely different enchilada to
Yeah.
now take that information and then do something with it. So you've just
Right.
described a process, right,
Mhm.
where you're reading the logs, you're interpreting it somehow, and then you're taking action on it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That sounds not as approachable, right? Like it sounds challenging, right? So
Yeah.
in terms of, right, so like, bite-sized pieces. So
Mhm.
how could somebody get started, right? I, collected the
Mhm.
logs. And I'm not using Jira, right? But I would like
Right.
to be able to take a peek at it and
Uh-huh.
say, okay, right. So, and I think we're just using an example, drop table. I just want to know, hey, drop table, I want to keep that
Mhm.
around for a little while. I don't have to go back into the logs.
Right.
What would you suggest in terms of how people approach that and start using that data so that they don't have to look for it, when their manager comes, hey, did something happen? And then you have to, open
You
the
have to
log.
scramble. Yeah.
You gotta
Yeah.
scramble. That's right.
Yeah. I don't like scrambling. So yeah. Well, I don't mind figuring things out and like getting to the, getting through difficult things, but I don't want to have to do it at like, 2 a.m. or something when I have to restore a prod database. I want to have a checklist that I go through, right? So the same with
Right.
auditing. So what I did was, so I have multiple servers, which I'm guessing most people do, right? So I'll just start kind of from the beginning and give a like high level. So I set up a SQL. So for instance, with the perms and schema stuff, then I set up SQL Server Audit. It goes to a file, like I mentioned, not max files, not max size, right? I do like 4 files, 50 megs each. And then what I do is I have a server audit. I don't have a database audit unless somebody comes to me and needs something specific, right? So just the server audit, it gets all the databases, and the same way it gets the server changes, all that in one. It writes to a file on a drive, on that server, right? So it's just like a SAN drive, right? And then what I do is I have a link server that on each of those servers that I then collect. So I have a central server that goes let me go back. There's a link server on each of the, I don't know what I call them, like the audited servers, I guess. And then I have an agent job on each of those servers as well. So every 4 hours, that agent job uses the link server and sends all that audit data over to the central server. So that keeps
to a
it all
table
in
at that point, or I guess because you're reading at that point, now you stick it into a SQL table.
Right. I stick it into an auditing database on the centralized server. So
Gotcha.
that way, all of my 20 SQL servers now are all in that same database for easy querying and reporting.
Okay. So now,
And
right,
so
inquiring minds want to know, and you'll forgive me, right? We have to dive in. So the link server, is that a T-SQL call, or do you have a DTS package or an SSIS package?
So in the
Aging
agent
myself,
job,
I
it's
just
just a
dated myself
T-SQL.
there.
Yeah, T-SQL call. So
Okay.
basically, when you say insert into some table on another server, the link server, you put the server name and then, the database name, the schema name, and the table. So it's like a fully qualified name.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So once it's over there, it's easier to report on, right? I don't want it in 20 different databases on 20 different, so I have it all over. And I've had attendees say to me, oh, well, you could do this, or you could do that. And I agree, you could do other implementations. Maybe you could the thing is with SQL Server Audit, it doesn't allow you to put to some others. It doesn't allow you to write to some other server the files. You kind of have to use a local drive. Right. So I think this is probably the easiest, best way I could think of. So anyway, once you have all the data on the central server, then there's a job that actually sends the email daily. So it's very easy I say very easy, but I mean, it's easy-ish to have database mail send an email with the results, right? I have it all nicely HTML formatted too. I think if I haven't, I will put that code on my GitHub. My GitHub is SQL Kitty, by the way. So I have a lot of this.
Compañeros, we're gonna push the easy button for you here.
Yeah.
And Josephine is gonna give you the code
right
to get this. And you know what they say about copy and pasting from the internet, right? But this is from a trusted internet friend.
Yes.
And you can get your audits in here. Yes.
Right. And you can always hit me up on Twitter. On Twitter, I'm at Hello SQL Kitty because somebody already had SQL Kitty and they don't use it.
That's unfortunate.
Yes.
I'll put in a call to Jack. We'll get this taken care of.
Yeah.
He's
too busy selling NFTs right now, unfortunately. So
yeah, there is that.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, I do have the code. So I have full presentations of all this with demos and the demo codes in my GitHub. These scripts to create the link servers and all that is in my GitHub. So you don't have to just go blindly through everything either. I've created all that stuff. And if there's any issue, feel free to contact me, because that was the whole point of me presenting this stuff, was to give people this leg up, because I had to go through all the pain of setting this all and figuring out what actions do. Because in SQL Server Audit, well, or maybe you don't know. I mean, I guess I should say,
you will find out if you
will
don't
find
know.
out. Yes, there are
Yeah.
a lot of actions that you can audit, and that's the nice thing about SQL Server Audit. It can be very, very precise. Like if you just want to get one action, like something very specific, that's where it shines over extended events as well. Is you can literally say, I just want to see if somebody, creates a table or something like that. I mean, it's like, it's not that specific. You'll get alter, drop, and create as well on that action. But the point is, it can be very specific, and it can be very confusing. You literally have to have 21 different actions in your SQL Server Audit to get perms and schema changes. So, and I've already done that legwork for you so that I know when I tell you it. I've tried just adding one and then doing things. I'm like, nope, doesn't get that. Add another action. And that's what my demo does too. There is a presentation with the demo, but there's also a script in my GitHub. You can walk through the same demo I do, and you can see how you build up these actions to make this whole thing work together. So it's pretty cool, actually, I think. I mean, not my demo per se, but the SQL Server Audit itself. I'm
I'm sure your demo was wonderful.
I'm so cool and very humble. But I think the SQL Server Audit is very powerful. It's very, very cool.
And I guess this is one of the great things about SQL community, right? Is the willingness to share, right? Is, hey, I've gone through these hard lumps, right? So let me help this again, make it more approachable, which I think which is another reason why I wanted to have you on, is because I was like, okay, this is a path to approachability, and not just some nebulous, hey, it works, right? It's great, right? Go do it,
Yeah. That's why I always like to have demos in my presentations, unless they're like data minutes. 10 minutes is like not enough to do a slides in the price. So, but I like to do that because then it's a reality check for everybody. They're saying, oh, well, she just showed me all these screenshots. Did she just make this up? And then, because it doesn't work in your environment, maybe. And I'm always happy to talk to people on the side too, and say, so if they encounter some problem, I'm always excited to hear about problems, because it's like an opportunity for me to learn, or maybe there's just something they missed, because it's easy once you get the hang of it, but I don't think it's easy when you first start. It's not like obvious. Oh yeah. Like, oh, you just know how to do that. Right. Yeah.
Sure. Just like anything, right? There's a little, some of that terminology, right? So server audit specification, database audit specification. Yeah. What does that mean? How do you get it? Okay. So just to close the loop here, I think, so we have the logs, we've now put them into the central database table. So, repository, they're in a table, and then you have something that actually goes through there. Now you said email. Are you emailing the entire contents of the logs?
So here's what I do.
Or are you kind of filtering through a little bit more?
Oh, so that's a good point, because with SQL Server Audit and extended events, both you can filter. So the important thing is to filter before you do. So when you set up these things, there's a filtering option, like in the GUI or with scripts, right? You can do both. You can do pretty much everything in the GUI or with a script, whatever you feel comfortable with. I like the scripts now because it's easier to put them on multiple servers, right? But anyway, I don't begrudge people if they like the GUI better. So the thing is, you go in, there's a filter. And so there's specific columns you can filter on. So like we have IDERA, and it monitors servers, right? So I don't want to see that account in there at all. I don't want to see the SQL Server $ account, because when you start auditing, you realize all the things SQL Server does in the background that you had no idea. All kinds of stuff that you don't want to audit. So you got to filter stuff out. Sometimes I filter out sys schema or tempdb or all kinds of things that I didn't want. I want to see what everybody's doing in all databases. I don't want to see everything they're doing all the time, right? So there's all that. You want to make it so that basically when you go grab the auditing data out of your files, like your SQL audit files, your XEL files for extended events, you're just grabbing everything because you've already filtered out before you start, before you even get going. You don't want it collecting all that in the file or in your application log where you're going to store it, right?
Yeah,
That's
you
just
already
going to
know you
clutter
don't want
everything
it,
up.
right? Get it out.
Yeah, get it. So technically, I've had people ask me though, because SQL Server Audit and extended events must have to look at everything because it has to know what's hitting it and then it has to filter it out. And I'm like, yeah, that's true. But ultimately, you don't want it storing all that stuff. So,
Right.
So that's how I handle that. So I don't want to filter after the fact, although I have to admit that I like to get all the schema perm changes for everything, but there are some application accounts that make perms and schema, not perm changes, excuse me, but schema changes. And I still collect those, even though I don't want to see them in my daily or weekly reports because it just clutters everything up. But I still want to see, I want to be able to go back to the database just in case they change something they shouldn't have. And it's a red flag, just in case something breaks, it's still in the database. It's just, I don't want to see that in the daily emails because I'm going to see some application thing like 50,000 times in there or something, but I still want to collect it. So there are some like nuances to it. You just kind of have to figure out what it is you want to see and filter
and
as
that's
much up at the
another
top.
great use case, right? Of like,
Mhm.
yeah, I need to collect this, right? Just in case, but I don't need that in my inbox.
Right. Yeah, I don't need that like 50,000 mile long email. And the other thing to note is, and my script does this with sending an email, you don't want the whole SQL statement because it blows out the HTML no matter what you do. I tried. I don't know how much time. I finally was like, no, you're wasting time now. Stop doing that.
Right.
And then just make a partial statement in HTML because you have the full statement in the database anyway.
Yeah.
So
if it's that interesting, go look it up, right? Stop being lazy, right?
yeah, just so yeah, so it works out. So in case there's like some red flag you want to know more, you always have the database to fall back on. So yeah, it's pretty easy.
Now, how long we just talked about, so 30 days, which makes more sense. And I'm only keeping 30 days because then you're piping it over to a database, right? How long are you keeping that database around?
See, that's all I keep is 30 days in the database.
Oh, even 30 days there. Okay. Well, there you go.
Because like I said, we've reviewed it by then. Weekly, we've reviewed everything every week. We have emails every day. And so if red flags come up, that's really all we need. Because like I said, we are not, the auditors don't care so much about the retention where I work so much as they want things to be reviewed. There will be cases, like I mentioned at my old job, where the auditor expects you to go way back. So you just need to be aware of the circumstances under which you are required to keep that data. So I wouldn't say you should only keep 30 days because it's really going to depend on you and what your company needs. So kind of up to you.
Yeah, but in terms of, right, I want to get ahead. I want to get ahead of the curve, right? I'm not it's not required of me now, but I'd like to start collecting it. 30 days seems reasonable, and if somebody drops a table and nobody's noticed it in 30 days, then
obviously, yeah, but it could be a quarterly table or something like that, I guess. Yeah, I mean, there is value. I could see changing all my my retention to like 90 days. I could see, or maybe a little like 120, because then you catch things that are quarterly. But geez, if something only runs once a year and then something happened, I'm like, well, I'm not really sure. Sometimes people come to me and say, this has been broken for 2 months, and they're like, well, how urgent can that be to fix? I mean, I'm not trying to be rude. I'm trying to be sympathetic here, right. But now I've got to drop everything at 2 a.m. and fix it because it was broken. No. So, it just, I think, I could see changing my retention policy, but I don't know. It's been working well so far. So usually, I don't change it unless something, I guess if something breaks bad, right? I don't know. The way
that makes sense.
Yeah. And all of this, like I know, so I wanted to mention before I forget, is that this is all for your SQL Server on VMs, right? But a lot of the stuff you can do in Azure. It's a little different is the thing in Azure. Like you can do SQL Server Audit in Azure, but it's all through the portal. You can't go in the GUI and right click and set up stuff. And then there are some tweaks to it and it audits everything by default. Once you turn on SQL Server Audit, it just default is everything, but you can change that with PowerShell. So I have a presentation kind of rolling out this year about that. And then
we're talking about Azure SQL. We're talking about Azure SQL database here.
Azure SQL database, yeah. And you can use extended events on that as well. Okay. And you have a bit more control. I guess you can have XEL files. Well, you still have XEL files, but you don't have to parse through those with XML, right? So I think that's one of the challenges I'm realizing People may or may not feel more comfortable with SQL Server Audit because you don't actually have to parse any XML. It has a function that does that for you.
Oh, nice.
Technically, it has extended events under the hood, but it's like a SQL audit file and it has a function you call in SQL Server. Now you can't do that in Azure SQL, right? Because you can't do SQL Server. You can't do the official SQL Server audit. It just has that in the portal as a little radio, little buttons, but the same concepts apply.
Sure.
So yeah.
There you go.
There you go. See, I get you all set up. Even if you have Postgres needs, I'm gonna get you set up for that too.
Man,
Nice.
So, yeah, that's right. For those of you who are, have to work with multiple databases, Josephine has got your back, right?
Yeah, my Postgres DBA coworker quit a couple years ago, and they didn't replace him. And so, yeah, it's like, well, there you go. And I don't know if there's some like misconception. I know this is totally unrelated to auditing, but it's the fact of the matter is it's a lot different. The engine, it's not just like writing SQL. So managing Postgres is like, it's night and day different than managing SQL Server. So many different things it does. And like the auditing too, if you want to do auditing in Postgres, you can do that. And it's called PG audit, right? But it's different, like the way you set it up, the way you manage it, right? Ultimately, it gets the same kind of things, read, write, or DDL or stuff like that, right? But it's different. It's much different. So it's just something to keep in mind. All of these things, yeah, that's tech, isn't it? I mean, nothing's like exactly the same. There's like 10 ways to do everything. So,
Right.
yeah.
And this, compañeros, is why we can be grateful that we work with SQL Server.
Right.
We have this podcast to lean on a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. So I guess other thoughts around auditing?
Do it.
Yeah, see, I agree. It should be part of the fundamental DBA thing. Like, when I've looked in the past, I haven't looked recently. I remember Ozar had this like plan to being a DBA, right? You're like 3 months or 6 months or whatever it was.
I remember that email thing. Yes.
Yeah. And it was like a PDF thing you could even like download. And I feel like auditing should be part of that. I can't remember if it was, so I'm not trying to knock him because I love his stuff. Like I use SP Blitz and all that stuff, but I think like that should be part of the fundamental DBA, like toolbox plan for being a proper, I put air quotes there for people listening, a proper DBA, right? But it's kind of like a side note. It's like a thing I think you should do for your own sanity. Even if you're the only DBA and you only have like 2 servers and you have like 3 developers or whatever, you're working out of your garage or something in a startup, I still feel like you should audit because you want to know what's going on.
Very good. Awesome. Well, thank you for the conversation, right? I think it's helpful. We look forward to some of seeing those scripts, right? And I'm sure you'll get a few more downloads here.
Yeah.
So, compañeros, we have changed up our SQL family questions, and Josephine is going to be the first one to receive these questions, and she's already given us some things to think about. So we may discuss these a little bit this first time. So now, tell us, how'd you first get started with SQL Server?
So I used to be a web developer, and had to use SQL Server, right, to query, put in apps. And then I switched over to doing GIS, so making maps. And I realized, I love maps, by the way, but making maps is all data. So I had to manage databases and access. But I realized SQL Server would be much better for this. And then after that, I kind of moved on to being a sysadmin, which was a lot of SQL Server in that job, because it was a team doing like a whole content management system. So that's what I oversaw, like servers, everything, SQL Server. And then after that, I left that job and I just became a SQL Server DBA because I realized I like the SQL Server part of it, the data part, right? So that's kind of how I got into that. So I've been doing SQL Server exclusively now for, I guess it's like 7 years, like DBA exclusively, not as part of some other role, right? So technically longer than that, but yeah. So
there you go.
Kind of quick path.
get hooked, right? And the next thing you know, you got Postgres, and
I know I just keep adding. My boss is like, you're going to be presenting at Oracle or MySQL conferences with audit, everything database audit. I might do that actually. I don't know. We'll see.
hey, there we go. You have to change your Twitter handle to, hello SQL audit.
I know, right, yeah.
Okay, so what would you do if you had to change careers?
If I had to, like, somebody just would never hire me to do SQL Server ever again, or I wanted to change careers.
I think more of the if you. Well, I guess you should change
Database
that if
disappeared.
you wanted to change careers.
It just disappeared like SQL Server. Yeah, tomorrow I woke up in a different universe and there was no SQL Server.
Yeah, that's right. Oracle placed a bid, a hostile takeover of Microsoft.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Oh, I'm out.
That one, it's gone.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, so that's a tough question because I'm not sure like anything I want to do otherwise would pay me as much. So that's sort of a roadblock for me. And I like what I do. So it's a difficult question. I'm like more artistic in my free time. So I would probably, if I was going to do something else career-wise, I probably want to go to like graphic design or something like that. Something creative but computery, so I could like mix the two because I don't have the computer skills right, and I have some. I'm not going to say that I'm a great artist or even good, but I have some creative skills. So yeah, maybe I would do that, mix those two things together.
There we go.
Selling NFTs. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, selling it.
Lots of Bored Apes.
Yeah, or cryptocurrency type stuff. Yeah, for sure. Bitcoin. Yeah. If I quit my day job, I would start, making Bitcoin. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's one thing that can instantly make your day better?
That's a good question. I thought about this before, and then I think I forgot what my answer is. I don't know. I think it's more about this like interactions with people like helping other people. Like you were mentioning, in Ukraine and watching CNN. I was watching CNN one morning. My husband loves CNN. And so he had it on, he left the room and I'm like sitting there watching it. And then why am I watching? I don't want to watch all of this. I watched some. And then there was a segment about how people were rescuing animals out of Ukraine and this animal shelter in Poland and how they were like helping these animals and showing how they were doing these things and people like leaving their like baby goats there and saying, I'm going to come back, but please take care of my goat. It was the most touching thing. Wow. So to me, it's like, it really like can change my day when I see things like, this common humanity, this like helping each other. Even at work, like somebody coming to me saying, I'm having this problem, like somebody asking me for help. Or somebody helping me. I think those things can like really change. It's like little tiny things, somebody holding the door for you, like just these little tiny kindness things, I think just can really change your day. Wow. No, that's a wonderful answer. I think we can get real busy sometimes, right? And we can forget the simpleness of those interactions, right? And what they can do for us. So right. I mean, I think, it's the most important thing. It's like the saying on my wall, I'll say right now is I'm reading it from my wall, is in a world where you could be anything, be kind. And I see that all the time because I could be whatever, everybody has these goals. What are you going to be? What are you going to be? What are you going to do? Make money, do this goal. And then it's like, yes, but what else are you going to be? Like, what's the most important thing to be? There we go.
I like it.
Anyway. I feel like there's a gospel principle there somewhere.
I feel like I'll step off
Probably.
my soapbox now as we step off. Yeah, I try. Let's put it that way.
There we go. No, that's great. So in that same vein, right? What is your go-to song when you need a boost?
That's funny. You say, like when I need a boost, it's funny because I do something reverse. Like if I feel bad, I listen to a lot of sad and angry songs.
Yeah.
I want all of that to bubble up. Like yesterday, I was irritated by something at work and I had to record my CitusCon presentation. I'm feeling really like irritated. So I'm going to listen to a lot of angry songs because I'm going to like promote that feeling. So like whatever feeling I'm feeling, I sort of like push it and like make myself sadder or even more irritated. So then it like moves out.
Oh, just kind of work it out of your system a little bit.
Yeah. So instead of playing like a happy song, I'll be like, I'll play this sad song and like a bunch of them in a row. And then I'll be like, okay, now I feel like, okay, I kind of like cleansed it. I mean, if I'm in a happy mood, I'll play happy songs, but this is
Sure.
sort of my philosophy of
You just dwell in whatever the feeling is and let it be, and maybe even promote it a
Right.
little bit, and then be like, all right, you're evicted. You got your 1 month rent. You're out.
right. Well, I feel like in our society, not to get on my soapbox again,
No,
but in our
please.
society, there's a lot of like toxic positivity, positive,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, put a positive. And I don't disagree with that, but I think you also have to accept like, how are you feeling right now?
Sure.
Instead of saying, I have to feel better right now. I feel bad right now. Why do I feel bad? Maybe wallow in it a little bit, think about it, and then see, because maybe there's something you need to change. Maybe there isn't.
Right.
There's not like a
Sure.
timeline for how you should feel
Working
bad
that
and
out.
you should feel better.
Man, all of a sudden, right? We are going deep dive.
I
right?
know, I know.
Into
This, oh my
into
God,
the
all my friends
psychology.
say this to me. These are the kind of conversations I have with anybody I'm close to, is like deep philosophical. I go sort of like deep really fast. Sorry. I go deep really fast.
No, man.
To challenge the societal standards of what is success, because people, sorry, I'm still going on my soapbox, but people matter no matter what you are doing. You're like they say,
Sure.
you're a human being, not a human doing. So is it like, do you need
Wow,
MVP
I like
to
that
feel
saying. I like that.
successful?
Yeah.
You know, do you need to make lots of money? Do you need this? So, but you should matter, even if you're like a homeless person living on the street, which I feel like we really should have support for those people. But the
Sure.
thing is,
Sure.
you
You're
matter.
still worthy of respect, right? And
Right. You, and everybody has a story. So anybody you talk to has some place they're coming from, and you could learn something from them.
Yeah. So I'm diverting here. Does that mean you listen to a lot of StoryCorps?
I don't.
Oh,
StoryCorps?
you haven't heard the StoryCorps? Oh, yes.
No, I had to write this down. StoryCorps?
Yeah. So it's through, oh gosh, now, I mean, I know that they keep it at the Library of Congress, but there's, I mean, I listen to it through public radio, but they, collecting, these stories, and some of the ones that they put on air are just amazing, but stories of people who have been, apart from each other and how they come back together. And it's just normal people, right? Having, normal experiences, if you will, but the way they put it together is quite interesting.
Interesting. I'll have to check it out. I've never heard of it.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks. I'll check it out.
There we go. Okay. So now we mentioned before, right? So bucket list. So the question is, what's the weirdest thing on your bucket list?
Right.
And Josephine was like,
I don't have a bucket list.
I don't have she is kicking conventional, right?
I am kicking the bucket. Not literally. Well, maybe literally, metaphoric. I don't know. That's not a good thing. It sounds like I'm going to die in like 5 minutes. Oh my gosh. I'm not afraid of death. I'm not afraid of discussing death, because I know some people are like, I don't want that, because I'm like, before I die, I don't want to talk about death. In fact, some of my friends are like, we have these long discussions also about death and not in like a morbid way, but just like be aware of it, because you have this stark realization suddenly you're going to die one day. But the fact of the matter is that I feel like you live your life every day, hopefully the way you want to, and like build your life in such a way that even though I spend most of my time in the house these days, that it's still like, if I'm like wishing to do something else, I'm sort of just wishing my life away. Like I have like now, geez, I sound so philosophical. I have nothing figured out, by the way, just so you know. Sure. I have problems and things I deal with. I have nothing figured out, but it's just sort of my philosophy is like, people ask me, where do you want to be in 5 years? I have no idea, like kind of questions. I just don't know.
So I'm too busy, right? Living right now.
I know I want to see Stonehenge, because I was in London and I didn't have time to do that. So that's on my bucket list.
I saw Stonehenge.
Oh, that's why you've already done all this stuff.
I did. I didn't.
It's already been crossed off, right? Exactly.
Give me your bucket list and I'll cross them, all the things off before
That's fine.
I don't know. I just can't see, like, you don't know the evolution of things. Like I wrote a book for PACT, and then I did a conference, group buy, and then A-Press contacts me and says, hey, do you want to write for us?
Sure.
What? And they're like, you pick the topic. How could I envision, like, when I wrote for PACT and did group buy, that some other publisher would say, hey, you pick the topic now, because PACT had a very specific thing they wanted me to do.
Sure.
And it was very outlined, but A-Press was like, you pick. I want it to be your passion. So I couldn't even foresee. I was like completely clueless. Like a couple of years ago, I would never even know like that was something I could have done.
Sure.
So I think that's why
That's
I don't
awesome.
really have a bucket list, you know?
Yeah, you're riding high right now. No, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe this is as good as it gets. And not in a bad way. Like people say that and it's like, oh my
I'm just
God.
imagining you on your deathbed and you've got a PAX book in one hand and an A-Press book in the other, and you're like, I've lived a good life. Like that's
I know. Oh my gosh. And it's funny. Oh, because I read a lot about what's the most important thing in life, and people on their speaking of which, I read about what people say on their deathbed, right? What's the most important thing? And I found that apparently the consensus was it's not so much like what you did or didn't do or like where you went or didn't go. It's more like, are you living true to yourself?
Sure.
Are you doing stuff that is like what you is like you? Like your parents wanted you to be a doctor. Did you do that? Or what did you do? Are you doing you? Kind of thing. So
Gotcha.
anyway, so I think about it. I just don't make a list, I guess. So.
It's just too bad this is the SQL Data Partners podcast, right? We needed to start another one.
We can have a spin-off. Yeah.
We need to get you like on away from the keyboard, or I'm not sure if they're still doing that one or right. Some of these
They're doing it on and off.
Right?
I think if you reach out to Richie Rump, they'll do an episode with you for sure.
There we go.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. Yeah, because I love this topic. Oh my God, I could go on and on, so I won't.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I just feel like, I've listened to celebrities, but I don't like to listen to a lot of celebrities, quite frankly. But the thing is, I've listened to some who talk about more in alignment with my thinking, in the sense that what does it really mean to be rich and famous? Is that the answer? That's not the answer. They still have problems. But the thing is, like, what's the most important thing? First, it sounds selfish, but is taking care of yourself, right?
Sure.
What's the most important thing you can do is like taking care of yourself, like self-care and like eating right and sleeping and, doing that stuff. Cause your family is very important. Your friends are very important, but if you don't take care of yourself, then you can't take care of them, like that kind of stuff. And I've seen some celebrities talk like that. And I'm like, yes, like that. Exactly. Anyway.
Very good, man.
Yeah, I'm on my soapbox today.
No,
I
this has
didn't
been
think it would go
great
like this at
stuff.
all.
We do appreciate it, Josephine. We do have one more question for you.
Okay.
And again, which I guess is going to go a little sideways on us, right? But what's your favorite ice cream topping?
So these poor guys, before I told them some of my answers, so they know.
Right.
And I don't eat ice cream because it makes me ill. So yeah.
So then
Do you eat yogurt? Do you have a favorite yogurt or a custard?
I don't eat yogurt either. And it's only because I'm actually like working my way toward being vegan.
Sure.
Because of health, because also, as you probably can imagine from some of my statements, I feel like it's very negative to our environment and animals in general for this system. Man, I'm on my soapbox again. But the thing is, I slowly worked there. I used to eat yogurt, quite frankly, but I felt like the cow who has to produce the milk for the yogurt and the plastic. I can't stand the waste of the plastic either. So yeah, I do eat like frozen like fruit bars though. God, I sound like I live such a I don't have anything.
You're just a hermit out on a hill somewhere. Yeah.
It sounds like I'm like
careful,
quickly going to become the Dalai Lama or something here. I mean,
no, we're not.
Okay,
we're not
anyway.
putting any of that on you.
I just feel like, oh my gosh, my answers sound so like, oh my gosh, I'm so no. Yeah, I do, but I do have frozen yogurt bars sometimes. So it's not entirely true, but I feel kind of guilty now because I see the cows running around the field. And then I had a coworker who was vegan and he explained to me what happens, how they make the cows make milk. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Sure.
So I had other people telling me this. So, so it's partly that. But.
All right. Well, smoothies are vegan and they're not hurting any animals. So just get a bunch of berries and put them in a blender with some ice. Live life a little bit.
Yes, exactly. Put some I do like chocolate though. So there is milk in that.
There you go.
Right? See, that's one of my, my guilty pleasure is mac and cheese from the box, Kraft mac and cheese, which technically has milk too, right? So anyway, I break some of my own rules. So what are you going to do? That's life,
Yeah.
And I think I made this episode really long. I was telling the guys before this that I look through podcasts and I see which is the shortest one because I have the attention span of a goldfish now. And it's like, oh, this is going to be one I would skip because I talk so long.
Oh man. There's just so much information. Well, now maybe you have an appreciation for
It's-
longer,
okay, yes.
longer form podcasts, and you're like,
Right.
you know what?
Exactly.
Maybe I will give this one a try, right? Even if it is 50
Yes.
minutes.
And I listen to podcasts on 2X, by the way. So the 30-minute one only takes 15 minutes. So you're right. I could do an hour one. It's only take 30 minutes.
There we go. Right. And that's okay. Compañeros, if you have to push pause and come back, we can.
Yeah, exactly.
That's okay.
It'll only be like a 5-hour long podcast. That's all.
Right. That's right. Okay, Josephine Bush, thank you so much for being here. If folks want to reach out to you on social media and grab those scripts, how can they do it?
So probably the best way is to just go to my blog, SQLkitty.com, because it's going to have everything you need in different pages, you know, so you go through the menu, you can see presentations, you can see where my GitHub is, my Twitter, everything's in there. So it's a good central location. Just hit that up and you'll probably get everything you need.
There we go. Yeah, there are YouTube videos, and we'll make
Yep.
sure they get posted on the show notes page for today as well. Mr. Eugene.
Yeah, you can find me at SQLgene on Twitter, and I blog on SQLgene.com.
And Mr. Kevin.
My Instagram handle was in the database table that got dropped earlier in the episode. Nobody was using it.
That's okay. Josephine.
We weren't auditing
figure
it, so we didn't know who dropped it either. So well.
Here I was going to say that you had us audited, and we were going to figure out.
No, we weren't auditing it because we were just freshly to this, right? We're just new, but we learned our lesson because now we don't even know who to blame.
There we go. We have our use case, compañeros, right? So if you'd like, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. And if you'd like to participate in the podcast, right? We'd love to have you. Reach out to me. I'm at Carlos L. Chacon. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Again, SQLdatapartners.com/audit is going to get you the show notes for today's episode. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope to see you on the SQL Trail. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
SQL Data Partners.